So I have a couple of things I want to share with you this morning. First off, my title is about if prayer is ever answered, it is always answered. And here's an answer to a prayer that CSL has spoken of. This is a special edition of Newsweek, and it is about spiritual living. And in it, on page 28, 29, it's about higher education, higher self. And it's an article about how CSL, Center for Spiritual Living, their training program and their educational program and their program for ministers is so effective. And there's also an ad in here. So I'll put that on the table over there so you can take a look at it and how exciting it is. You know, we talk about these principles going, spiritual living, Centers for Spiritual Living being worldwide. And the truth of the matter is that our principles that we have been teaching since the 20s, Ernest Holmes started in the 1920s, they have grown and now they are mainstream. So we have totally been successful in whatever way to spread the principles of religious science. And you know, the funny thing is that we've been doing it for so long that nobody really recognizes this philosophy. But we're everywhere, and that is so exciting. So when we talk about if one prayer is ever answered, all prayers are answered. And that's the whole idea behind religious science, and the belief that many of us come from the old Christian background, the old Catholic background, that God is arbitrary and judgmental and vindictive and just generally not a nice guy. And the truth of the matter is, God is love, and because of the law, like the law of gravity, the law of affirmation, of putting out what you put out is what you get back, reciprocity, that's a law. And it is not that God makes a decision about who is going to have an answered prayer. It's not a decision that God makes. It happened a long time ago in the creation and the beginning of the universe and the cosmos that law was put into place. And only now are we learning how to use it and function with it. Jesus did indeed teach the law of reciprocity. It is done unto you as you believe. And somehow or other, that all morphed into creating a God that was angry and vindictive, and that is not who or what God is. So here's something I wanted to share. You know, when we talk about our prayers are always answered, our prayers are always answered, and yet they're not necessarily answered in the same time frame that we would like. So I've had this in my little folder for a long time, and today I want to share it with you. I don't know where it came from. I guess someplace on the internet, but I don't know where. I'm a teenager, it says, a senior teenager. I have everything I wanted as a teenager, only some many years later. I don't have to go to school. I get an allowance every month. I have my own pad. I don't have a curfew. I have a driver's license and my own car. The people I hang around with are not scared of getting pregnant. And they don't do drugs.
Oh yeah, just for sure.
And my acne is cleared up. Life is great. Those are all prayers I suspect that each one of us had uttered when we were teenagers. And so, lo and behold, our prayers have all been answered. So March is the global month of realizing the power of mind. And the talk that I'm sharing is loosely based on an outline that Reverend Martha Quintana of Rio Grande Centers for Spiritual Living in Albuquerque submitted to the CSL home office. So she reminds us of a quote from Ernest Holmes, which says, "We believe in control of conditions through the power of the mind." And do you remember last week I shared a quote, maybe you weren't here, so I'm going to share it again, that Ernest Holmes said, trained thought is far more powerful than untrained. And so that's really the bottom line and the difference between how quickly our prayers may be answered. They can be decades later, or they can be immediately answered, depending on how much faith and how much trust you I put in to the power of my word when I declare a prayer. So the power of the mind. Several years ago, Bill Moyer did a special on PBS, I don't know whether you all saw it, about the power of the mind. And there were 3 things that really struck me that I remember after all of this time about the power of the mind. He used an example of a young woman who had multiple personalities. Now, I don't even know if that's a mental diagnosis anymore. I think it's probably changed. But the point is that one aspect of this young woman's personality was that she was diabetic. And the other aspect of her personality, she was not. That to me was absolutely dazzling. It certainly is a strong indicator that our minds control our body. And our minds control what shows up in our life as far as our physical expression goes. Another similar circumstance and situation, one personality had astigmatism and needed glasses, the other did not. And you wonder, how does that happen? The same body, the same person, and yet different expressions of that personality. And we all have different expressions of our personality, don't you know? Another example that Bill Moria shared was that there was a young woman who had some disease that she needed an injection every day to stay alive and to stay well. And they experimented in this way. Every time they gave her that injection, which was painful and difficult for her, they would have her smell a rich lavender smell. Rich lavender smell injection, rich lavender smell injection. And over time, they just gave her the rich lavender smell, and her body responded as if it had received the injection. Wow. The power of the mind. And remembering that the mind is the agent of God. The mind is God. So when we talk about how prayers can be answered, prayers are answered through us in powerful, unexpected, magnificent, dramatic ways. If one prayer is ever answered, all prayers because God is not arbitrary. God is not mean. God is mind and thought. So we live in a spiritual universe. Everything is spirit. Everything is energy, including what we see as the physical world. Since all is energy and spirit is the cause of all physical things we can see, then the effect is the physical world. We go to cause to change effect as many times as we need to or desire. There are no mistakes. The quintessential question is this, then. What experience do I want to have? It's a choice. What experience do you want to have? What experience do you choose for yourself? And then, holding a vision of that, speaking your word for it, and creating it for yourself, or speaking to a practitioner who is trained, whose thoughts are trained. So Ernest Holmes said, we may be quite emphatic in saying that we think the universe exists for the expression of spirit, and man exists for self-expression, because he is the expression of spirit. Man does not exist for the purpose of making an impression upon his environment. He does exist to express himself in and through his environment. There is a great difference. Expressing God in and through your environment. There's a big difference. Most men who believe in God believe in prayer, but our idea of prayer changes as our idea of God changes, and it is natural for each to feel that his way of praying is the correct way. But we should bear in mind that the prayers which are effective, no matter whose prayers they may be, are effective because they embody certain universal principles which, when understood, can be consciously used. Now, what are those principles? Those principles are acknowledging that God is all there is. We are an expression of God, and God is throughout the universe whole and perfect and complete, and therefore we must be whole, perfect, and complete. It cannot be otherwise. And then just giving thanks for that and trusting fully that the prayer is answered, because it must be. It must be. So standing in faith and standing in trust, knowing that when you speak your word, when you are clear about what you want, when you are clear about the outcome that you seek, then your prayers are answered. And then I can hear some say, yes, but, what about? And the yes, but, I've said this so many times, but it is so true. The yes, but is the prayer. That's truly what you believe. And that is truly what you're creating for yourself. So coming to the place where you do not allow that doubt, that caveat, that yes, but, to enter into your mind. And so how do you keep that from happening? Well, you keep it from happening by using affirmations or prayers that are brief. Keep remembering and coming back to the fact that your word is powerful, that God is loving, that what you think is what you get, and what you think is the cause. It is the creator. It is the absolute basis for what's going to show up in your mind and in your life. What you think is what you get. Thoughts are powerful things. Powerful things. So, I wanted to share with you this story. I had another one planned, and maybe I'll tell it to you too, but when Mark was talking about, or singing about, what's the name of it?
I dreamed of rain.
I Dreamed of Rain. Gary Braden talked about this story in one of his books, the name of which I can't remember. He spoke of his Native American friend who was gonna go pray the medicine circle. And he said to Gary, do you wanna come with me? No, is it Brian or what's his name?
Greg Braden?
Greg Braden, I know it's close to G, yeah, Greg Braden. So he said to Greg Braden, do you wanna come with me to the medicine wheel? It was a drought. And the rains had not come. So Greg Braden went with his Native American friend to the medicine wheel to pray about the rain. So his friend took off his shoes, stood in the middle of the wheel, and then walked once around the wheel, went back in the center of the medicine wheel, put his shoes on, and said, do you want to go to breakfast? And Braden said, well, I thought we were going to pray for rain. And his friend said, no, you misunderstood. We're going to pray rain. I walked around the wheel and I felt the rain. I tasted the rain. I smelled the rain. I felt the mud in my feet as I walked the circle. I prayed rain. And that was it. He put on his shoes and they went to breakfast. And the rain came. So that's the kind of prayer that we're talking about. Trying it on. Feeling the mud in our toes. Feeling the sun. Oh my gosh, I love the spring. My heart opens with the spring and the trees in bloom. So when we pray, it is not just a thought. It is a feeling. It is feeling how it feels when our prayers are answered. Acknowledging that. How many of us remember to thank the divine for our acne clearing up years later? Or having our own home years later? When we pray the rain, when we pray the pray and feel it, things escalate and move so much more quickly. Now, in a way, there's a big blessing, a real big gladness about some level of slowness about our mind turning things over. You remember in The Secret, the guy that prayed the elephant and ended up with an elephant in his front room? So there is that caution that what you pray for, be prepared. It's coming. It cannot be otherwise. So if there's a delay, the delay is in our belief system that there must be certain particular steps that have to be taken. There has to be, this has to happen, that has to happen. And those are our beliefs that we're they're putting out into the universe. The step by step by step belief that this has to happen, that has to happen, this can't. That's our belief system. That's our yes buts. The divine can immediately solve any issue that we have stated a prayer about. But in our humanness, we believe that it has to take steps, that we have to go from A to B to C to D. The divine doesn't have to do that. The divine can go from A to D. But that scares us all. Then we call it a miracle. And a couple of weeks ago, somebody, I think it was Christy, said that she's always surprised when her prayers are answered, and she considers it a miracle. Well, yeah. The thing about it is that what's miraculous about it is how Spirit puts it all together in such unusual, exciting, dramatic ways. The ways that we couldn't have begun to have thought of. It's very exciting when we speak our word and our word is fulfilled. Because so often it's fulfilled in dramatic, unimaginable, exciting ways. So here's the story I was going to share with you. In November, Edric tells that he broke his foot. He says, throughout the entire ordeal, I saw how God basically took care of me and all of my needs in such a wonderful way. First to say, I work as a photo assistant. I work for a photographer and I set up studio lighting situations. So all the photographer has to do is take the picture. Well, on this morning in November, we had some sets. The set designer had placed 2 boards on the ground to be painted. The boards were lying next to each other, but 2 corners were touching each other, so one couldn't just walk between them to get to the other side. I was thinking to myself as I walked by them that I should really move them before someone gets hurt. I didn't realize that someone would be me. Well, I should have walked around the boards, but instead I jumped over the 2 corners. And because I had taken off my shoes and I was wearing only socks, I removed my shoes so that I would not leave footprints on the seamless set paper. I slipped and fell on my right foot. I felt a crack and I knew the ankle bone had broken. But there wasn't any pain. Rather, my foot was numb, much like when you fall asleep on your hand and it has a heavy, tingling, numb feeling, but no pain. The crew was kind of astonished that I wasn't screaming in pain. But I knew what had happened, and there was nothing else I could do but wait for the ambulance. Well, the ambulance driver and the x-ray technician and the doctor and the surgeon all asked me, "Aren't you in pain?" Well, I said, my foot is numb and it is very uncomfortable, but no, I'm not in pain. Mind you, they were looking at my foot, which was basically pointing in another direction. Yuck. It seems they had seen people who had less awful injuries than me, who were screaming in pain, but I was not in pain. Even as the doctor was straightening out my foot to reline the bones, I declined any painkillers. I only felt 2 stings of sharp pain that ran up the nerves of my leg for a split second, and that was it. That's the worst I'd ever got. Yes, it was uncomfortable, but it never was excruciating or unbearable. That was miracle number 1. God spared me the pain. The second miracle about this situation was at the time I was injured. I was insured. Now, that may not seem like a big deal because most people are insured through their job, but because of my chosen profession, I'm self-employed, and money goes up and down for me. Some years I would make a lot of money, and some years I don't make so much money. The point is, at the time, I could not afford health insurance. I remember several years back in the early 90s, worrying over the fact that I was uninsured, that if I ever had an injury, I would be in huge financial problems. That day, I prayed to God about it, and God gave me peace. I had to trust that God was bigger than not having health insurance, and that if I ever needed health insurance, it would be provided. I had to trust that God was bigger than health insurance. God is bigger than any of our problems. God is bigger than any of our problems. Well, I met my partner, and he knew that I was uninsured. I told him that I trusted God to take care of me, and if I ever needed insurance, that would be done. My partner said, well, you shouldn't test God. And I said, I know, but the fact remains I can't afford insurance right now. Basically, I'd been uninsured for 20 years, since the last time I worked for a company that paid benefits. Well, many uninsured years passed without any injury or medical problems. My partner then got a new job, and this company offered health insurance for gay people and their partners. So he decided to get health insurance for me. My first thought was, uh-oh, because I remembered my prayer and the divine assurance that if I needed insurance, it would be provided. Uh-oh. And my first reaction was, if something is going to happen to me, I wonder. Mind you, I've been in perfect health most of my life, and before my accident, I was like, wow, I'm lucky to be one of those people who've never been in the hospital. Well, I had an accident a year later after my partner got insurance for me. After 20 years of being uninsured and nothing happening, I was insured at the time of my accident. That's miracle number 2. After my foot surgery, I needed 6 months of rehabilitation, so I couldn't work because my job requires me to be on my feet all day long. After my accident, my employer gave me a huge Christmas bonus, and I had enough money to hold me over throughout the entire 6 months. By the time April came around, my money had run out. And so when I returned to work, it was when I needed to get back to work. That was miracle number 3. I had no debt, no bills, everything was financially fine. God had taken care of everything. I was healed, and I could return to work, and I could return to my life. And during that time, I had a partner who took care of me, friends who visited me, and prayed and blessed me. So in this event, I experienced no pain from my injuries. My medical expenses were taken care of. I had no financial burden whatsoever, and the universe confirmed that I could trust my life completely, and the divine would take care of me no matter what. God has been amazing to me, and for that I'm deeply grateful and even more trusting of the divine process. End of quote. In Science of Mind, we believe in the control of conditions through the power of the mind. We believe in the control of conditions through the power of mind, not vice versa. Conditions do not control the mind, even though sometimes there's an appearance of this because our consciousness is encased in a physical body that engages and experiences the physical world 16 hours a day. We begin to believe that we are our bodies and the physical self, when in fact it isn't true. We are not our bodies. We are not our bodies. God is expressing through each one of them. Like the rest of the limitless universe, our true nature is spiritual, and we're made of energy. Hence we go from the invisible to the visible, from the idea to the manifestation of the idea. We are here solely to have this experience that we each know as our individual lives. Because our physical universe is the result of the invisible spiritual universe. Anything that is manifest on the physical plane can be re-manifested. Anything that is manifested can be re-manifested in some other form. I can do it again and again and again. We are no longer leaves blown in the wind. Instead, we're powerful beings able to create using the power of the mind. Able to create using the power of the mind. And if things are not going well for us, we can recreate our lives. We can do it again and again and again. We stand at cause every moment. We stand at cause every moment. And we can choose how we're going to use the power of our word, the power of our mind. It's a daily, moment by moment choice. We get to choose again and again and again. We get to be creative. And so my question to you is this. What do you want to create in your life? What is it that you want to show up? What do you want to manifest? What is the choice that you make for your life right now? And then feel it. Pray the rain. Know what it feels like to have a life that you choose, that you have created. Stop focusing on the negative and how things are not, and start focusing on how things can be. Pray the rain. Feel what it feels like to be in the life that you love. That is your divine expression. Hold to that. Live in that space. Pray the rain. Feel how it feels. Live the life that you choose to live. And the rest of it will unfold with effortlessness and ease. All that's required of you is to think aright. To know what you want and to pray the rain. Be who you are. Be who you want to be. And celebrate that. Let go of all of the negative yes buts that are creating. It's like Russell fixed my computer. Thank you, Russell. Yay. I really appreciate it. And he talks about programs that are running in the background that I don't even know that are running. Shut those programs down. Be in the program that is in front of you to be. So I love you all. And you know, my joy is to be able to see you in ways that you probably or may not or can't see for yourself. So when I say I love each one of you, that's the truth. And what I love is the truth of who you are. Namaste. So I would invite our practitioners that are present today to join me in holding this congregation and those that are not with us today. I remind you that there's the prayer box over there. If you are not able to hold the rein for yourself, if you're not able to know for yourself, I invite you to put a prayer request in the box. And let the practitioners in this community know that for you. So join with me as I go within to that place that I trust beyond measure. That place where I rest in the knowledge that there is only one God, one power, one presence. And I am one with that. know that God always, invariably answers prayers. If one prayer is answered, all prayers are answered. It cannot be otherwise. And so I speak now my word into the universe, knowing for each one of you that your highest and best self is expressing right this moment. That no matter what you dream of, what you long for in your life is flowing immediately to you. It's not for me to know what that is. It is only for me to trust the universe to answer, to know how powerful your minds are, how powerful my mind is, how loving, gentle, generous the universe is, all aspects of the divine, the personal and the impersonal, the law and the love. So I celebrate the flow of good that is coming right this moment into each of our lives. The flow of love, the flow of vitality and vigor and dynamic good health, the flow of friendships, community support, the flow of an environment that is clean and pure and filled with joy. The flow of all good, whether I'm able to name it or not. It's on its way. And I get out of its way. I take my bloated nothingness out of the way, and I allow the divine to flow into me, through me, around me, and surround me. And with an open, joy-filled heart, I give thanks for it, knowing that my prayer must be answered. My prayer for you, for this community, for this country, and for this world must be answered. I pray the vitality, I pray the good health, I pray love, I pray clean rain, I pray joy and celebration, I pray abundance, peace, sweetness. I pray all good. And I know that it is done in ways that I could never imagine, in ways that I could never outline. I just get out of that way of the divine. And I claim it and own it, and I invite you from the deepest part of your being to own it with me by saying, and so it is.